This is the Arizona Mining Review. It's August 28th, 2013. I'm your host, Lee Allison, here at the Arizona Geological Survey in Tucson. And as usual, our first guest is Nyal Niemuth, head of the Economic Geology section for the survey based in Phoenix. And Nyal, this week I saw a really interesting article coming out of, I think, Australian press, talking about a project that the U.S. Geological Survey is doing, going back looking at samples from around the country for minerals that may have been overlooked when these mines were originally developed 100 or 150 years ago. And in particular, what got our attention was reports of some rare earth elements in Bisbee. And I understand you've been talking to the folks at USGS and have a lot more information and a better understanding of what's going on. So what have you heard?
Yeah, I saw the same stories and we've had some inquiries. So to do a little follow-up, I contacted a couple of names that were in the early articles, Ian Ridley and Alan Koenig, who are in the USGS office in Lakewood, Colorado. And Alan's the guru who's really been doing the work on this. A lot of this has come out of some laser ablation studies he's been doing.
And so, okay, explain laser ablation studies on old samples that they've been pulling from these mines?
Yeah, what they've taken advantage of is there are a number of the universities who have been ditching, if you will, their historic mineral collections. Fortunately, they've been getting acquired and held by the University of Nevada folks at the Bureau of Geology in Reno and at the Colorado School of Mines. The universities that ditched them were California universities. So they've gotten into the heart of the mining area in the Rocky Mountains, which makes them accessible to, especially those samples in Golden, to the folks at Lakewood, Colorado.
Okay, now the article that I read talked about the mineral or the element indium and reported it being found in Bisbee. And two questions there. One, explain indium, and also the article was talking about pulling samples from tailings from these various mines, but I think you've heard something different for Bisbee.
Yeah, that's kind of goes back to the headlines we've been seeing. A lot of these headlines were talking about acquiring rare earths from waste. And I think that might be a goal, or maybe it would be a positive outcome if we could find there were a lot of dumps or materials that had been overlooked and containing some of these rare earths or rare elements that might occur in some of these other mineral deposits. And so that was kind of what the technical side of the project was. And they're taking advantage of, though, not looking at waste or slag or tailings at this time, but they're actually making very small pellets from these existing mineral specimens that are in these collections. And in the case of the Bisbee specimens, they were intrigued to start there for a couple of reasons. One, they had a retired geologist, Don Bryant, who was living in the Denver area, who had been working at some of the specimens from Bisbee. He was the geologist for Phelps Dodge at Bisbee back in, I think, the 50s and 60s. And so he was able to help them identify where some of these minerals came from within the district, the various mines like the Campbell and the Coal, etc. And he was able to provide good descriptions and locations so that when they did this analysis, they'd be able to start unraveling not only the trace elements, but maybe look at some of the mineral fluids and where they've gone or where they went and got deposited.
Okay, now the report I saw talked about one element, indium, which is used in photovoltaic cells and I think a variety of other applications. Did Alan indicate if there's any other of the rare earth elements that they found in the Bisbee samples so far?
He did. And that was actually kind of interesting looking at the indium. And then, of course, I know on your blog you've put some things up over the last year or two about First Solar and how in their thin film photovoltaic cells they also need tellurium, that's a key element required. And so they're looking at both of those elements. Well, the one thing neat about the new technique is they're able to see the entire periodic table, very small sample. And there are some, he can maybe be a guest and tell us more about some of the technical difficulties. He was explaining to me there's some possible nugget effects that may, over or under report the concentrations from these very small, about 1/3 of a gram pellets that they make in a laser ablate. But what was, I think, interesting is when I hear indium, and I think most people, if they start doing a little research, they're going to learn that indium is typically recovered downstream in the refining process of zinc concentrates and metals. And so what's interesting is they're seeing relatively significant quantities, 10 but as high as 200 ppm in not only the sphalerite from the Warren District, but they're seeing it in chalcopyrite. I think so. You know, that was kind of a surprise, or something that I have to admit I wasn't very aware of.
Right. But were there other rare earths? Let's get back to that. I think you said you thought there may have been some other rare earths that they're finding?
You know, in the 20 samples or so that he's reported on and processed from the Warren District, from Bisbee, he didn't make any specific notation of significant quantities of the classic, the definite rare earths reported.
Right. Okay. Wow. It sounds like a pretty exciting discovery. In fact, when these mines were originally developed, miners were going after the highest concentrations of copper, gold, silver, lead, zinc, things like that. Nobody thought about looking for these trace elements or these rare earths, but it may be that these mines have a second life here. So I like your idea about inviting Alan or one of his colleagues onto the show here in the near term and learning more about the process and finding out what they're discovering. So great stuff.
Yeah, and one of the other things, not only is it exciting to us in the exploration, the ore deposits end of the industry, but this also has implications for people that are down in those refinery stages, because as we change and close smelters, refineries, adapt new technology, sometimes some of these byproducts are no longer recoverable. And depending on, I'm sure, hopefully people are doing thorough analysis, but especially as the value and the need for these commodities rise, we want to make sure we don't inadvertently lose that production.
Good point. Nyal, once again, thanks very much. Appreciate you coming on the show. We'll look forward to talking to you next month and find out what's new in the Arizona mining scene.
Lots we didn't get to cover. Thanks, Lee.
Okay. Well, we're here at Granite Construction in Tucson, where we've just finished the monthly luncheon meeting for the Arizona Mining Alliance. And I'm meeting today with Rick Grinnell and Bill Assenmacher from the Southern Arizona Business Coalition and Sidney Hay from AMIGOS. And I want to ask you, what brought this group together? How did this get going, and where is it going today?
Well, it came together because we support mining projects that are good for jobs and good for our communities, and we needed to pull together a broad cross-section of the community that also believe that the mining industry is good for our community.
And this is not just mining companies that were in this audience.
Oh, no, far from it. These are businesses, people that sell tires or environmental consulting services. You know, the best of the best in people that help create sustainable, healthy environments for our families. Those companies depend on the work that they do for the mining industry as well. So it's a cross-section of small businesses all across southern Arizona that employ people in good, high-paying jobs that our community's customers, whether at the dry cleaner or the grocery store or at the local restaurant, all these folks may not even realize how much mining has contributed to the growth of this state and this community, and long range into its future will do the same.
Now, in addition to the companies you listed, I heard electric utilities here, I heard banks here, I heard law firms, and so it's a wide variety.
All across the spectrum.
Now, AMIGOS, explain what AMIGOS is.
AMIGOS is an acronym, and it stands for Arizona Mining and Industry Get Our Support. And our members support this industry. They write letters and make phone calls in support of the industry, but they also provide the best of the best in goods and services to the mines. That we've created a new day in mining through high quality companies that have created new technologies so that we are mining copper in the most economically friendly way, in a sustainable way long into the future, because we have good small business entrepreneurs that take the risk to go out and do it and employ people. And that's what AMIGOS is, although we like to say AMIGOS were mine's best friends.
Okay. Now, Bill, the Southern Arizona Business Coalition is new, relatively new.
About a year and a quarter.
Okay. And as you got started, this was one of the first things you folks were involved with.
Yes, our group started over public hearings for Rosemont, but it soon evolved into a need to get out in the public and make mention that there were people that not only supported mining, but we have companies whose jobs and livelihood depend upon a vibrant industry. And Arizona has been about 30 years since there's been any significant new mines built. And so we have the cycle of mining where there's new construction or maintenance, but we do represent, not just through SABC, but through AMIGOS, hundreds of suppliers. And these suppliers are firms like mine, which might do engineering or metal fabrication, but also it can be the insurance companies and the banks. And so anybody that would normally sell a goods or service to a mine site is interested in that continuing to grow. And the number of people working at the mines is less than it was, say, 20 years ago. But the economic impact of selling $6 or $7 billion worth of copper and an industry impact of, say, 12 billion is a lot for Arizona. And keep in mind that this was really the #1 state for minerals for the last 150 years.
Well, Rick, you've been chairing a lot of these meetings, and what's your sense, how have these changed over the last 18 months from when it started out?
Well, it's been an evolution of education. The more people understand about the mining industry and the economic impacts, but also the social impacts that the mining industry brings to southern Arizona. We are a plethora of intellectual capital that gets exported around the world. We have you right here in Tucson, Arizona. We have Dr. Polkman from the university. I mean, we have first-class mining education, engineering, and a whole organization of opportunity for people to get involved. And the elevator of economics becomes very opportunistic in the mining industry. You can start out at the bottom and end up working your way right to the top.
Well, my sense is that what Arizonans do recognize is that we are a big mining state, but they haven't recognized the breadth of the community that is behind the mining industry that's supporting it. And I think it's been a surprise to people who have been attending these meetings, just how many companies and people are there to support the mines. So what's SABC doing to get that message out and explain that? Because you're focusing on the business community and getting them engaged and mobilized around this because the importance of mining to the economy. How are you getting that message out beyond even that core group?
Well, I'll speak to that first. Obviously, Rick and I both go on talk radio. We do try to write editorials. Our website is very active and interactive with plenty of articles and information about coming events. We are in an economic cycle where maybe people might think we're coming out of a long or difficult recession. But mining has cycles on its own. And I think the important thing is that there's windows of opportunity to grow a construction business when mining is vibrant. There's also times when you're in technology to maybe develop something that has a mining application. So there's firms that might be in something as simple as, say, software or robotics, where they may have something to sell to the mines, but it takes that interactiveness of knowing who is out there spending money, who is going to develop a new mine, which properties are maybe in need of technology. And so it's a way of kind of bringing everybody together and sharing bits of information and educating people about the future of mining in the state.
Sydney, you come from the Phoenix area and you've been working with a statewide organization. Is there anything like this going on anywhere else in the state, like what's happening here in Tucson?
No, I think this is really visionary what Bill and Rick have come up with here, and it's model of success in just a few short months, where we're now trying to look for bigger and bigger venues, because I keep telling people, no, if you haven't signed up, don't come. I mean, we're telling people not to come.
We have a political environment that's different than the rest of most of the rest of the state. Southern Arizona is very tourism driven, and here's the dichotomy to this whole thing. Mining brings a lot of tourists, and an amazing number of tourists, which also enhance the hotel and hospitality industry, the dining and restaurant industry. And so in the spin-off of this is unbelievable. The 2011 Arizona Mining Association report said $4.6 billion of revenue to the state of Arizona. They talked about the number of jobs. Southern Arizona is, over 10,000 alone right down here in southern Arizona.
That's a lot of jobs.
Statewide, it's over 30 or 40,000 people are directly or indirectly employed. And actually, the mining is sort of the hub that everything feeds off. Somebody said something about being an octopus earlier. Well, it's exactly what it is. I mean, you got the head, and then you got the tentacles that go out and touch everything and everybody, economically speaking, socially, and it all goes back to substantiating the validating mining industry in southern Arizona. And our political arena here doesn't understand that, because most of them have not been involved.
Right.
Right, I was just going to ask you about that, because I went to the Arizona Department of Tourism and said, do you track mining tourism? The people who are going to the old mining ghost towns and the historians, or the people who go to the Sarco Mineral Discovery Center, things like that. Is there a way that you're monitoring that? And they don't. It's not something they've broken out. And so I think some people have argued that mining is bad for tourism, but Rick, I think you've made the case, no, that it's an integral part of our culture and our history, and it draws people here.
And also the relationship with Mexico. People don't understand the amount of interaction between Arizona and Mexico and commerce and going back and forth and doing things. It's not just tourism, it's the jobs that are converted there as well as here. And it's again, it's sort of that cloud that nobody's looking at. And yet it's ready to rain. And all we have to do is give it enough moisture and enough heat so it can explode down here.
So Lee, our firm does work in about 10 foreign countries a year. Last year we exported $20 to $25 million worth of manufactured product, and all those customers came and visited us, which means engineers, procurement people, managers of business would come in. Not only would they visit our firm, they would visit local engineering firms. They would maybe network with other firms, whether it was exporting product into Mexico or overseas. Tucson at one time was called the copper capital mecca of the world. We've kind of given that up a little bit to Chile, but we're still the center for excellence for copper type work throughout the U.S. Tremendous amount of technology and engineering firms, and they do work globally. And there's a tremendous amount of interaction internationally right out of here in Tucson.
And that's one thing we haven't touched on, but every one of these meetings has a handful of state legislators here and have been involved in this from day one. State senators, state reps, but also I've seen county commissioners, city council people, other local officials showing up here, county supervisors and officials coming in here to hear more, listen, and talk about their roles. And I don't think I've seen that in any other kind of venue like this.
No, today we had a staff person from the Commerce Authority, from the governor's office. We've had staff members, key staff members from our U.S. senators and congressmen.
State land gentleman was here
It's
from
having
the
an
state.
impact.
Yeah, so when you talk about a mining alliance, it really seems to have brought all the different components that deal with the mining industry together in one room to kind of share information and talk about what's going on. I've never seen anything like this before. Where do you see this going?
Well, we're going to continue it as long as it needs to be done. And one would think this is a never-ending job because this state is blessed with lots of natural resources and minerals. And it will be very strategic to the country going forward to develop not just copper, but many of the other natural resources that are here. And the U.S. needs to be very careful not to be dependent on foreign countries for key strategic materials.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all very much. I know you all have a lot of other things to do. Appreciate you hanging around and doing this with us.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything you do for us.
Great to have you in town.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Mark Cocker, a geologist who's recently retired from the U.S. Geological Survey here in Tucson. And Mark's been involved in a global assessment of potash. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us about the report that I understand is about to come out, or it's in press.
We've been working on two geodatabases. One is potash occurrences and deposits throughout the world, and has everything that we could find on it, like grade, tonnage, years of operation, grade, I think I said grade already, locational data.
So this is not just mines, but deposits.
Where we could not find a mine or occurrence, if we couldn't find a mine, then what we used would be a drill hole to intersect potash.
Okay. And this is a truly global assessment of everything out there.
It's really not an assessment, it's just the documentation at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. This report, we should be looking forward to this coming out soon, right?
It should be coming out soon. It's gone through review, and it's got Western Minerals approval, and it's gone to the publications group.
Okay.
And I think the person in charge there gives the director's approval.
Okay. So you've got to be one of the most knowledgeable experts in the country and the world right now, and kind of this
On a global basis.
on a global basis there. So give us a preview. Give us a sense of what's going on in the global potash market, and what just happened that's upsetting everything.
Well, I guess it was the end of July that there's two major companies in the former Soviet Union. Uralkali, which is over by the Urals. They have 5 mines and 7 processing plants there. And
that's in Russia?
that's in Russia.
Russia,
in-
okay.
on the western side of the Urals.
Okay,
And there's a company called Belaruskali, which is in Belarus. And they have, I guess, 6 mines now.
okay.
And 2 just recently went into production. The others have been in operation since about the 1960s.
Okay, and Belarus is on the western side of Russia, between
Yes.
Russia and Poland.
Right.
Okay,
And those 2 companies had merged together, so to speak, into
joint venture?
a marketing group.
Oh, okay.
And it's just like the Campotex in Saskatchewan, where all there's 3 companies there that have merged into that they have a marketing arm, which is
They have a
Campotex.
joint marketing, they work together and market as a
Yeah,
as a
they
as a
each
team.
produce so much potash
Okay,
for the market.
and a lot of folks
Campotex.
refer to these as cartels,
Right.
whether they're officially cartels or not, but
And back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, Germany had a potash cartel. So they essentially fixed the amount of potash that would be produced, and hence would affect the global potash price.
okay, but things are falling apart.
Right. Uralkali pulled out of this marketing group with Belarus and decided that they were going to produce as much as they could from their mines and sell most of it to China, but also to India. And in that single step, what they were essentially doing was going to be lowering the price of potash.
Right. And I think when that announcement came out, we saw potash prices dropping, or at least the reports of the price dropping into the $300 a ton range or even lower.
Yeah, I don't know that the potash price actually dropped. A lot of the potash, essentially all the potash is on contract.
Oh, right.
So it's a set price for, say, 1 million tons or whatever. What's affected was the potash stock prices,
Okay.
and they dropped upwards of 20% in one
Right.
day.
Not only for producers, but for companies that were exploring or proposing mines. So the fear is that a lot of the new mines being proposed may not get going.
Right. Because you have to have essentially backers in terms of mostly stock prices or loans of some sort.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons we wanted you on the show is not to talk about so much what's happening in Russia and
Right.
Belarus, but understanding what this might mean in Arizona, where we've got 3 companies actively exploring for potash in the Holbrook Basin. 2 of them have announced plans to develop underground mines. Both of them are chasing investors down, and one of them has lined up some Chinese investment for as much as a quarter of their production for 10 years, but at a price of, remember, $425 a ton.
Right.
So what we're hearing is projects all over the world being put on hold or investors holding back. But it's interesting that the Ethiopian project is moving forward. I would suspect it's doing so because potash at the surface, the capitalization costs to develop that are going to be among the lowest in the world, and there's probably a nearby market for the product.
Correct.
Okay, what does that mean for Arizona? How are we going to compete with projects around the world? What's it going to take for Arizona projects to be able to move forward in this new environment?
Now, one thing that people need to consider is that these potash mines take anywhere from 5 to 7 years to actually get it into development. And
Okay.
that's for a conventional underground mine. For
Okay.
a solution mine, it's maybe about 3 to 5 years. And the costs for a solution mine are lower than the conventional mine, as
Okay.
you might expect.
Okay. Now, the numbers I've seen so far show that the capitalization cost to start a new mine up in Arizona are about 30% lower than what Canadian mines we're talking about. One, because they're deeper, they're working in a more hostile environment, but Arizona's got a lot of infrastructure already placed. Interstate highway, rail lines, and a good power system and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. You go to some place like Ethiopia, maybe right at the surface, but their infrastructure is going to be more limited.
Right, they have to build a very long road from the deposit down to a new port which is being built in Djibouti.
Okay.
So they do have a lot of infrastructure to be built there.
Right. Whereas here in Arizona,
It's there.
we've got a lot already.
Mhm.
So I've heard that some of the biggest projects in Canada may be on hold, at least
Oh, yeah.
because of the cost of them and just the uncertainty over price.
BP, which was going to try to open the Jansen mine, which will be the biggest in the world if it ever got off the ground.
Okay.
But they've been going back and forth about whether to develop it.
Because of the uncertainty over
Well,
price?
Before that,
Oh,
you know,
even-
they
okay.
need to decide what they were going to put their money into, whether it's an iron mine in Australia or copper mine someplace else or
Okay.
potash.
Right.
And they have not decided one way or the other.
And in fact, what I've been hearing is the economy's recovering. We're seeing somewhat of an increased demand for potash.
Well, people have to eat.
Right.
And potash is very beneficial to crops.
Right.
And the world population has doubled since 1970, I believe.
Okay.
And so there are more people, less arable land because of population growth. And so people have to put more into the ground to get more crops back out.
And you brought a chunk. So where is this from?
This is sylvite, which is mostly the reddish material, and halite, which is mostly the clear material. That's from Saskatchewan.
Okay. So the sylvite is the potassium-bearing
Right.
mineral.
It's
Okay.
potassium chloride.
Okay. And as this is what they're producing out of the mines in Saskatchewan?
Right.
So this is basically what they're pulling out?
Mhm.
Okay. And this is, except for maybe the amount of sylvite mixed in with the amount of salt, this is basically what it would look like coming out of Arizona? Something similar to this?
Probably a little less sylvite, but
Yeah.
essentially the same.
Same thing? Okay.
The grade in Saskatchewan is much higher than any place else in the world. It's roughly about 23% K2O.
Okay.
One thing you have to be careful about when you look at the grades that companies post, there's KCl that they often use, which is
Okay.
looks higher. It's about, K2O is about 60% of the KCl if you want to convert it.
To convert it, okay. Okay. Well, what should we be looking for in the world markets here? I mean, everything seems to be in turmoil right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. Is there any particular sign that you think is going to indicate how things are going to play out of that? Is there something we ought to be watching for?
I think it's too early at this point.
Okay.
As I said, the potash mine development's like anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And there can be some differences in that due to geology or
Okay.
mine construction.
Or local regulatory issues or...
Right.
Right. Well, amazing times here. It's to see a decision like this being made off in the middle of Asia, and the turmoil it's creating around the world, and the turmoil here in Arizona. The uncertainty about what's going to happen. But the two Arizona companies that are talking publicly both just permitted additional core holes, and they're drilling additional exploratory wells right now. So they're moving forward. So I think they seem to be of the same mind that there may be turmoil now, but they're planning for 3, 5, 7 years out, and you need to continue moving forward and watch some of these things settle out.
And they could also just develop the property and sell their interests. I mean, that's another option.
All right. Well, I think Mike's letting me know we're running out of time here. So, Mark, thank you very much. It's a great short course on the global dynamics of potash. It's amazing to see what's going on. So we may have you back here in the near future as things develop and kind of find out what's going on. And I'm really excited, looking forward to your report being finally released from the USGS. I know a lot of people around the world have been anxiously waiting to see this.
Yeah, we have a couple inquiries about it already.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to get it out the door and into the hands of people who can use it.
Right. All right. Well, great. Thanks very much for
Thank
coming
you,
in.
Lee.
Well, that wraps up our episode of Arizona Mining Review for August. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, these episodes are recorded, and we'll put them up on our YouTube channel probably later today. So check out the website to get the posting on it. I want to thank our producer, Mike Conway, our cameraman, Jordan Matty, and our production team behind the scenes, Stephanie Marr, Arnie Bermudez, Ron Palmer for technical support. We'll look forward to seeing you next month on Arizona Mining Review.